Hello and welcome to Confidently Wrong, a show by regular dudes talking with confidence about content we have no right to speak about with any kind of authority, but do it anyway. I'm Wesley Nakamura, and as always, I'm joined by award-winning director Brian Redondo and Savon Jones, aka Captain Vonnie. This is episode 149, and this is a new show format called Does It Hold Up? We'll be watching the 1978 hit Superman as Christopher Reeve plays the titular character in this blockbuster film. I'm confident that it's going to be the best show you've ever listened to, and well, hey, if it's not, you can always ask us for a refund.
Incredible!
Hello, gentlemen! Welcome back. It's good to see your smiling faces.
Is it really good to see our smiling faces?
It is good to see your
Not
smiling faces.
all of us are smiling.
Oh, that's true. But it would be if you were smiling.
Okay.
How about that?
Okay, I'm gonna save it as a reward for you, Wes. I'm gonna dangle it like a carrot.
That's good. That's good parenting. You reserve your joy for when I do good.
That makes you my son.
Well, I mean, the way the Knicks-Lakers relationship is, you might get full custody.
Ugh. My goodness. By the time this comes out, the Lakers will have long been eliminated from the playoffs. We'll see if the Knicks are still
lake
playing.
Will be all dried up.
There
are no lakes.
Yeah, that doesn't even make sense. Just because
nothing about it makes sense.
Where are they? Minneapolis Lakers? Is that where that?
That's
comes
enough
from?
of the hate.
Well,
coming
cool.
From you guys. It's hard enough. It's hard enough right now as it is. Don't pile
worry.
on.
This movie's gonna pile on the West Coast too, so we'll keep moving.
All right, let's do it. So we're gonna do a first time for a new segment, a new show format. This one is called "Does It Hold Up?" And so it's kind of what it says. We're gonna go watch an older movie and decide if it holds up to our modern sensibilities. Sometimes we'll do it as like a prank on Savon and be like, "Here's this show that we loved. Savon, you've never seen it," and then make him watch a show that we loved.
He's already pulling his hair out.
But
that should be the logo for "Does It Hold Up?" It's like the NBA silhouette, but it's Savon like holding his head in both hands. Like, come on,
nothing to grab.
Yeah. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll get to see Savon's extreme distress that was just happening. If you're listening, feel free to check out our YouTube channel. We post the full video recordings of all our shows on there in 4K. All right. So, what is this week's movie for Don't Hold Up? Brian, what are we watching?
Don't Hold Up?
What did we watch?
Does It Hold Up?
Does It Hold Up? I'm sorry.
Our inaugural pick for Does It Hold Up? Also known as What's the Homework for Savon?
I don't do that.
Is the one and only the original Superman movie from 1978. I can't even hum the theme song because every time I try to, it just devolves into Star Wars
or Jurassic Park.
Like, does John Williams, is he a one-trick pony? Come on. Like, I know he's the iconic composer.
That Star Wars theme.
This is the same song.
They all just come together.
That Star Wars theme had me gassed. That Star Wars, I'm sorry. That Superman theme had me gassed. I was like, oh, this is kind of hard. All right. John Williams in there? No wonder
he was in his bag.
It's all the
same. Yeah. It is all the same, but it was still amazing. It's iconic. I mean, his theme song for this one, he did Indiana Jones, I think, as well, and he did Star Wars.
He did Harry Potter too.
Less iconic, but still good.
Oh, I think that's pretty.
Yeah, that's pretty iconic.
You think so? The twinkling. It's not a fanfare though. It doesn't have the.
But
the big
when you talk about him doing stuff different, make up your mind.
You're right. I agree. It is iconic, but in a different way. That's all I meant. It's just a different type of feel to them. It doesn't match the other ones. Okay, so most expensive movie ever at the time of its creation is what Savon tells us. He said the budget was how much? $55 million.
Buckaroos.
Woo!
This was filmed in 1977, maybe 1976. They released it in 1978. So this is many, many moons ago, before any of us were born. It's the first really major Superman movie. It's probably the biggest superhero movie of that time. It follows on the footsteps of Star Wars, which came out the year before. Has anyone seen this movie before? Brian, have you seen it before?
I don't even know. Maybe
like when you was in school,
sort of like some
it's
of
on TV.
Some of the scenes seem familiar.
Okay,
but the one that I think that I remember more is Superman 2.
Yeah,
with General Zog, like that. I know
man, that
for
street
sure.
Battle,
where
he
fights
between
the three other Kryptonians. Yeah. That one is lodged in my brain.
That happened.
So Superman,
it's crazy.
I like. Maybe I saw it. Maybe I didn't. I have no idea.
Okay. Sav, have you seen Superman 1 before?
Not even.
So this is the first time.
I know about this
Has
movie,
he seen anything before he was
Probably
born?
not.
The first question.
No, outside of Star Wars.
So we're breaking records here.
Man,
I love it.
I didn't. All I know about this movie is just like any pop culture memes or references. So throughout the movie, there were a few moments I'm like, oh, I understand this reference now. I've seen this character. Like, what was it? Marlon Brando as Marlon Brando. Like, I've seen that parodied a bazillion times. That was my first time actually seeing, like, oh, this is the thing all this shit I've watched in my life was making fun of. Oh, like Megamind makes fun of that. Like, I love the movie Megamind. There's an entire bit making fun of the Marlon Brando.
Really?
And and I always knew that it was meant to be a Superman joke. And like,
you didn't realize it was from this movie.
I just know, oh, this is from a joke from the old Superman movie, but I never seen the movie, so I don't know anything else. So outside of a few moments like that,
gotcha.
I didn't know Diddley Squad.
Maybe we should watch Megamind. As does it hold
Shit, that held.
I have fond memories of that movie too.
I'm so mad that there's more Despicable Me, but not more Megamind, because they came out around the same time, and I guess the Minions were more marketable. Sorry, that's my
Minions are hyper marketable.
That's my soapbox of like, no. I'm saying I hate that Despicable Me became popular and Megamind didn't, because Megamind was better.
Megamind was so good.
Meet the Robinsons was also a very good movie.
Let's chill out. Let's slow it down. Let's talk about Megamind here.
the short T-Rex arm jokes were just top tier.
Also,
in that movie.
Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs.
That was good.
Also good.
Very good.
Yeah. All
right. I've seen this movie.
Superman.
Yeah, I've seen this movie several times. Mostly as a kid, though. I haven't seen this movie in many, many, many years. So I had not very any recollections of what was going to happen. It was as if I had seen the movie for the first time. So that's kind of where we stood.
You could have watched it last week, and you still would have come in to this one.
What happened? Like, this movie?
No, last week I would have remembered. I would have remembered from last week. Maybe, possibly. Probably. The fact that it's not 100, though, I don't know. Maybe I should get that checked out. So, what were your first impressions? Let's go to Savon, because I want to know. Savon, what was your first impressions of a 1978 movie starring Christopher Reeve and Gene Hackman, and with all of the things that come along with, a 1978 movie?
First of all, you saying these actors like I'm supposed to know who the hell these people are.
You don't know Gene Hackman?
You don't know Christopher Reeve?
I know Christopher Reeve, but if you put Gene Hackman in a room with me at any age, I would just be like, who's this white?
Famous dude? Hoosiers. And
it's like Julia Roberts. Like, I know who she is, but if you just put Julia Roberts in front of me, I don't know if I don't know if I could pick. Like, I don't know if I was in a room full of people, I would just say, "Oh shit, that's Julia Roberts."
I love
like
Julia
if someone
Roberts.
Says, "Hey, Julia Roberts, who is that?" I say, "Oh, it's some kind of actress." Like, that's my level of knowledge. I've heard their names, and it begins and ends there. First impression.
All right. You don't have a sense of how big they were in their day. Okay,
but my first impressions were the acting was way better than I expected. I think some of the characters, and maybe this is just how acting was back then, the characters were a little...
Because you had to rely on it back then.
No. The characters were a little more...
You couldn't hide behind CGI.
Oh, no, I don't mean... No, I'm not talking CGI. I'm just talking like the acting itself. Like the drama. These felt like more classic drama actors rather than... Like, it didn't feel like how real people talk conversationally, but there was gravity in a lot of the characters' delivery, especially in the intro scene with the Kryptonians and all that. Of like, it's hard to put my finger on it, but I liked the acting wasn't bad to me, which is usually one of my big critiques of older movies. I feel like that style of acting just doesn't really sit with me very well. I enjoyed it. But the biggest thing, and I said this in the pre-show, was that throughout this movie, I was consistently blown away. Actually, two things blew me away. One, I did not think that this movie was going to go so in-depth into actual Superman's lore and backstory. A lot of stories skip past a lot of the Kryptonian stuff, and you really just make it about Superman grew up on Earth, and that's where his story begins for the viewer. But we really got a lot of Krypton backstory that a lot of the other Superman stories I've watched in my life didn't really do in the same way. And I liked it. And I was like, oh,
and they gave him a chandelier spaceship.
They went all in on that in the 70s. And I actually am like, whoa, for a big budget Superman movie that's meant to be for all audiences, they really went comic book level nerd of now we're really fleshing out the motives of why the parents sent him there, how his powers work. Like, they really made it clear because he'll be on Earth, he'll have his powers, and a lot of that.
The Reds.
Yeah, a lot of that.
Yeah. Why Earth specifically?
Way more fleshed out than I would have possibly expected. Like, I felt like, a real comic nerd made this movie just because how in-depth they went. Because you could have easily have glossed that over and not had that have been as long as it was and got a similar effect. And then I said in the pre-show,
maybe they should have.
I'm actually, in hindsight, I'm actually okay with that. It's a long-ass movie. It's a 2-hour movie. It's more than 2 hours.
Oh my God. It's 2 hours and 24 minutes.
It's a long movie. That's including credits and all that included. But like that, even without credits, that is like a 2 hour and 10 to 15 minute movie. It is long, but like
we're not even like their end credits. They're also beginning credits, which took forever.
Yeah. The beginning.
But they were awesome.
Yeah,
those were awesome credits.
They like named every single person.
Hey, you like that
had anything to do with the movie at the beginning.
You approve of that?
But that lets us enjoy John Williams'
the Star Wars score.
Shouldn't you enjoy that, Brian? Don't you get mad? Don't you get mad when people skip over the credits?
I mean, to some degree, but like I don't need to see the PA's name up there.
But
Brian's only mad because it wasn't his name. If his name had been on there,
playing that.
It should be on for 20 minutes minimum.
It should be watermarked on the screen.
Exactly.
No, but
edited by
across
directed
every
by
character's eyes.
So but seriously, the biggest things, acting was better than I expected it to be. This felt like a real deal comic book movie. They didn't condense things for the sake of just marketability. They really said, now we're going to explore Superman's backstory. And that's really ambitious for his first major movie. And again, for the most expensive movie at the time, like, that's bold. And I respect that. But the biggest thing is that I was judging this movie off a 1970s grade scale of what I expect special effects to look like. And I was impressed top to bottom. For a movie that is 46 years old, I am thoroughly impressed that the creative minds in this movie had the visions of these shots, these sequences, things that had never been done on screen before. Really, the closest precedent was the thing Star Wars was doing, and they made it look really good. Superman running through the streets just as a kid in Kansas, even just him goofball. But I think there's nothing comparable to that at the time in the 70s. There's making super speed look good now with modern VFX is hard to do. So, like, I was very impressed with that for the 70s. But in general, I enjoyed watching all the special effects moments and even pausing it and kind of saying, I can see where this is like, I guess they had to really get creative, but it's not me holding it against them. It's me being impressed that they really had to get creative and probably come up with totally uncreated techniques and new shit that no one had done before. And that really elevated this movie for me because it felt like a masterclass of you don't really have a big tool set, but you got to figure it out. And they did that. And now that I've seen videos where VFX artists talk about how back then you had to do certain things by hand, now there's a program that literally does it automatically. Once I kind of learned that little bit of context as a person who knows nothing about editing or VFX, that just really made me have a lot of respect for how much work goes into it.
Shout out Corridor Crew.
Their videos absolutely showed me how much work, and they made me realize these old movies, there weren't programs that do all the heavy lifting. You had to figure new shit out yourself and come up with totally new techniques, and that shows in this movie, and that really elevated to me in a creative sense.
Yeah, constraints create
exactly
creativity. That is always a truism.
Every time there's a cool sequence, I'm like, how did they do that? Like, that's my first thought.
Yeah,
how
I'm
did
trying
they
to
do
wrap
that?
my mind around it too. I was like, even the running, like running through Smallville past the train that's going full speed. He looks weird, right? Like he looks kind of weird, but I couldn't wrap my head around how exactly they shot it so that it looked that way.
50 years ago. How the hell did they do that?
I don't know. Like
that was my favorite part.
The other big mystery to me is one. I was taken aback that General Zog was in this movie, right?
Because
I remember Superman 2. What is General Zog doing in this movie? It's like I'm watching this at 11:30 at night. I need to watch it for this show. And I'm like, did I just queue up the wrong movie? It's like General Zog, but then they put him into the Phantom Zone that you guys pointed out, which takes the shape of like a flat, shiny diamond that is like floating in the sky. And I was like, how do they do that in 1978? How does that happen exactly? And then they get trapped in it like Bill and Ted style in a phone booth. I don't really know how they pull that off in film.
They also had that cool like hula hoop prison that kept them like restrained.
Oh, the thing from the tire store with the two tires rotating onto it. I mean, like that was another instance where lack of CGI, lack of special and visual effects, but they made up for it with style, right? Like that's just cool lighting. That they just do like the tire trick around the three characters, and it makes the scene.
It all had personality.
It feels otherworldly. It feels like a David Bowie music video or something. And it sets a nice tone.
The crystal aesthetic.
Yeah. So like there's plenty of stuff like that. But for me, like, my first impressions weren't necessarily the VFX. It was just like kind of like like all this stuff that I didn't remember, right? Like General Zog. I didn't even remember Marlon Brando was in this movie. So I'm like, wait, the Godfather is Jor-El? Is he going to be like, my son?
Oh, wait, that's who he is?
That's
the dude from The Godfather?
You gotta be a better man on Earth. Like,
Jor-El and The Godfather are the same actor?
That's The Godfather,
man. What the hell? Yo, that's wild.
So that was a good Brando. Well done.
That was kind of crazy. And then we drop in a Smallville in the beginning of the movie, which lasts for like an hour or something. And it's not Christopher Reeve. I was like, wait, is Christopher Reeve
I was really
confused. In Superman 2? Am I just like complete? Do I have my history messed up?
I did the same thing because I checked the credits and I was like, no, it's definitely Christopher Reeves in this movie. It's starring him.
And who is this old ass no name actor playing Clark Kent in Smallville as a teenager? This is the guy that's Superman. Where's Christopher Reeve? And Christopher Reeve doesn't show up until like the first 1 hour into the movie.
Yeah, no, literally an hour in.
Like what? That makes no sense to me. And his performance is iconic, right? Like
he was really good.
He's sort of he is the person that holds the mantle of Superman, right? Like you gotta argue like, oh, who's the best Batman, whatever. I think pretty universally agreed upon that Christopher Reeve is the best Superman.
Some people are really on the Henry Cavill boat.
Really?
Yeah.
I like Henry. I like
Henry
Cavill as Superman, but this movie made me realize, Christopher Reeve is
Clark Kent.
He is sorry, you're in your spiel. I'll get to my thing later.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think definitely for Clark Kent, to me, like Christopher Reeve,
fantastic,
was like totally entertaining.
When they had the mugging, and then she kicked the thing, and your boy shot the bullet, but he kind of hit it with the doing. And
he caught it. And he was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I fainted."
Yeah. I'm like the self-sacrifice, and then he just got the bullet. Like, come on, man, I'm really like that. Flick it away on my way, Lois. That was way. Obviously you got to suspend your disbelief about the difference between Clark Kent and Superman being two different people. But Christopher Reeve's acting
always.
between those two was like, you could see, like, I think there was a moment in that movie where you can see him shift from Superman to Clark, just even body
they let him
language
take off his
style.
glasses and put
He
it back on.
hunches up a little bit, and I'm like, this is really good. Like, I was way more, I was
like silly, but
like,
good.
it's silly, but it's a superhero thing. It's campy by definition, but them really distinguish, like, that they sold me well on, like, Clark was really instilled as a young person to be humble. It sold me on how humble Superman is as a character, and his whole thing is that he's very grounded and down to earth. And I actually thought that Christopher Reeve sold that incredibly well with how I couldn't be that powerful and be as chill as he is, and purposely not be flexing or purposely make yourself look meek and weak specifically as a cover. Although I think his typing is what he uses to get ahead, though, right? Didn't the guy say he's the fastest?
Perry says like he's a very fast
like,
typist.
Okay.
It's like that's a skill set back in the 70s.
Yeah, but also, his Superman, I guess, I don't know. I was, those things were way better than I expected it to be, and that was like a very pleasant. Like, I'm watching the movie, like, all right, and I'm like, oh, hold on. Like, Wes, you ever had a teacher moment where the kids don't want to hear you talk about or do some stuff, and then like a little bit in there, like, well, hold on now, this is interesting. That was this movie. Like, all right,
They're like, wait, you mean to tell me? Yeah, that.
Well, to your point, Savon, like about this movie taking directions that you wouldn't expect. One of the things that I didn't expect, and which is also a reason why Christopher Reeve doesn't show up until the until the second hour, rather, is that like from Smallville, he doesn't go straight to Metropolis, like to live his life or whatever. There's a period
like Antarctica
where he talks to the Godfather, and he's in Antarctica in the Fortress of Solitude for 12 years.
What the hell was that?
I was like, what? He's training in Antarctica for 12 years.
I had to rewind the movie.
I missed that was what was happening.
What is going on?
Did I miss something? The mom was like, remember us, remember me.
I thought he just like transformed because he went there and like was ready, and now he's Christopher Reeve. You're saying the movie says he's there for 12 years?
Marlon Brando is like explaining something in the clouds, or he's like, it's like 1 year for you, and now it's been 12 years, and now you're ready. His
dad imparts all of, like, I guess the past, like, knowledge and stuff that I guess was in the pod with them. Because I guess at first I thought in the intro sequence as a baby he was learning that stuff, but I guess that don't make sense because baby wouldn't be able to learn it. But I guess that was all the lessons the dad wanted him to eventually learn to be able to have the values.
Yeah,
and
he's
stuff.
like, now that you're 18,
now we can like put you on game of your heritage, history, and all the stuff. Because I didn't see Superman 2, but like he knows who Zod and them are when they arrive, right? Like, because he's done his homework historically. I don't remember.
Oh, I
don't know. I haven't seen the movie, but yeah, that was I was not ready. Like, this was a real. If this movie came out in modern times, people would be like, "Yo, what is this nerdy ass Superman movie? We don't want to see all this Krypton shit."
Yeah.
People would be like, "Yo," like, people would be livid if this movie came out now. But like, and this was his first major production, and they put all this bread, and they swung for the fences, man. Like, I don't know if the studio must have had faith in these people to say, "Look, man, you don't show up for the first hour, F it, we trust your judgment."
Yeah, that should not. Well, I don't think Christopher Reeve was also a household name at that point, so it wasn't like he had to be in the first moment of the show, right? Gene Hackman, I think, gets like first billing.
Yeah, but if you're watching a Superman movie, you're still gonna be like, "Dang, you don't see Superman in the fit until
where is Superman? Yeah,
where's Superman? Who's this Clark jabroni?"
Yeah. They wanted to do the origin story
it was
a little
good.
bit.
I was just pleasantly surprised that they went as fleshed out as they did for considering the status of the brand at the time. Like, that's what impressed me.
Yeah, I wish they would have done more in the Smallville.
You want
setting.
more Smallville?
Oh my god!
Well, like
some of those shots were so long.
Yeah, it's like saying, like, just show us more, but maybe like
it's Kansas,
time.
bro. There's so much to see. You see in one field, you see them all. Once the dad died, what's the dad died? Like, all right, let's keep this shit moving.
Yeah, I found that my first impression was just like the movie kind of dragged, and I was trying to remember things a little bit, but just overall it felt just kind of draggy. There's just like, and maybe this was true about a lot of movies at that time. There's just a lot of talking, There's a lot of like, I don't know. I mean, even the trial had a lot of exposition and a lot of talking, and it's very flowery language, right? And so I don't know. It just felt like the movie, like, sort of, my first impression was just like it was taking too long for like things to happen, and I don't know if that was because it was like not, maybe maybe the filmmaker is not as skilled at that point, or because just like that was sort of the sensibility of the time, and maybe both. Hard to know. We can't go back in time. I'm not going to watch.
Suck?
Yeah.
Does he suck, or does the entire era suck?
Yeah. I don't know.
It's just the way you said it. It's just like, man, something's going on here. I just can't tell if, like, does homie just not know what he's doing? I'm like, damn, that's a bold statement.
I hope he wouldn't make that movie today in the same way. That's all. So that was my first impression. You guys have talked a lot about, what you liked about the movie. Can you see why it made so much money? Savon said the receipts $300 million in 1978 movie, our money. So that's that's a huge budget. Right? Yeah, that's probably similar to $1 billion movie today. So I don't know, what is that? Avatar?
Yeah.
Avatar made $1 billion?
Yeah.
So what Avatar, I'm talking Avatar 2, the
Way
more
of
recent
Water.
Avatar. Yeah. So can you see why this movie got all the hype and why people were excited about it?
Absolutely. There had been
1.4 billion.
There was nothing close to compare it to. There wasn't I guess there were Superman things, but not nearly on the level of Superman content we have now. Nothing like it had been done.
It comes on the coattails of Star Wars, which is also a big adventure.
But basically,
movie.
It was one of those, this is going to be the biggest movie of the year type thing. So this is like a hype thing. It's Superman. No one had done it before. You get a fully fleshed out Superman origin story top to bottom. Like, they don't skimp on, they didn't condense stuff for the sake of just making a quicker movie. I even said in the pre-show, I think, or maybe before, they filmed this movie and its sequel Superman 2 at the same time. By the time this one came out, the other one was like 75% done. But this was just a major technological and just large-scale film that a lot of effort and energy was put into. And for something that audiences at the time had nothing comparable to, the closest thing would be Star Wars, but even in different genres, it's not surprising that this movie did so well. Again, this is me as a guy who doesn't like Superman, doesn't like watching older movies. Like, I'm not the target audience.
You're not the target
audience. I watched this movie and I was entertained. Like, I could, and even the parts that I wasn't a fan of, I'm like, cool, that is definitely being influenced by just my modern sensibilities. But I'm also, that was 50 years ago. It's just not fair to judge a 50-year-old movie by things that I judge movies for now. So, like, all of...
Maybe, but also that's part of our segment is like, does this hold up to today?
I think,
in some parts, I think it doesn't.
I think overall, it is a good and well done movie. If you like Superman, it's worth watching. I think if you're someone who's into filmmaking, it's worth watching. Like, the special effects alone makes this movie age well, because it just shows you how far the industry's come. And to what we said several times, restraints and challenges breed innovation. And it's fun to watch. This movie is super fun to watch from a technical perspective. And that's from someone who's a layperson when it comes to film tech stuff. So I can only imagine someone who has a better understanding of just VFX language and technology, or even just Photoshop. Like, this movie is a very fun technical marvel to watch. But I think it holds up decently I think it holds up solidly as just a movie, and incredibly well as like a technical masterpiece to look back on. But like, even by modern standards, I'd say this is like a B movie. It is not bad by any means. Its biggest issue is that it's kind of long. The biggest issue is that it's long, and that if you don't care about Superman's origin story, that part can drag. But also, I have respect to the filmmakers of trying to, like, the biggest issue with Superman movies is that it's hard to flesh out Clark Kent and make him an interesting character. So I'm also not upset that they gave him a full childhood to show the kind of man he is. Like, it makes you sold on the whole I don't lie, justice and truth BS that otherwise just sounds cheesy and unbelievable. Like, I was a little sold on it, but that long intro kind of helped with that. So, like, it's a pro, it's a con, but it's like, it's a double-edged sword. It doesn't mean they shouldn't have done it, but you take the good with the bad. B movie by modern standards, A in terms of looking at the tech and reviewing it from now.
I'm so used to movies and stories these days having like a cold open, right, where you're like already in the midst of conflict, and then they kind of jump to a backstory, right? So for them to just start from point A, like
chronologically, yeah.
Kal-El is a baby all the way to now Kal-El is Superman. Yeah, just like
No
straight,
flashback.
no frills, A to B, is a little jarring to watch that way, right? And so I'm not gonna lie, like the first hour. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. The full movie, I was falling asleep to.
We also admitted to watching it very
was
late.
I was watching it very late at night. I just come home from going out.
Oh, boy, you're trying to drink that
it's not
drunk on a Friday night at home.
Not ripe conditions to watch this movie. But I will say, I do understand why it made the Boku bucks.
Yeah.
Like I think it's clear, right? Like kind of what Savon said, you know, from a VFX standpoint, probably stuff people had never seen before. People had never seen a superhero movie at this scale before, right? And of the most iconic superhero of all time, right? So you got that. And then once we get into that second hour of the movie with Christopher Reeve, I think Christopher Reeve is so good that you like it's hard not to be kind of charmed by his version of Clark Kent and his version of Superman when all of that starts popping off, and then you throw in on top of that his dynamic with Lois Lane, which is really great, and really sizzles on screen, and then all the super heroics that you do want from a superhero movie. We get a lot of it, probably like too much for my taste, but you know, you get everything that Superman does. Like even the end of this movie, I know people talk about this moment, but I didn't realize that it actually happens in this movie where Superman rotates the earth to go backwards through time. Like that is just so bananas.
Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Like what? Wait, he spins the earth, and that's how time travel works. Anyway, like I think that is just like so bonkers and outrageous. But that in 1978, I could see that being like this big thing. Like nobody has tried this before. This is wild.
People weren't the jaded cynics online breaking down why time travel theoretically shouldn't work. In-game had to come up with their own time travel system just because cynics at home will say, well, actually, considering the bar.
Yeah, there's no Twitter teardown going on.
Is that what it's called, Twitter teardown?
I just coined that.
That is basically
put my name on the screen.
That's basically what it is. You didn't have just a Twitter taildown, the internet inspectors to just poke holes in every. You didn't have people catching every frame to break down why something's awful. No, but that was wild.
The visual effects on that were actually really good. The logic behind it was awful. That made no sense.
But look, when Superman is just flying and holding people and things, but it's not accounting for their individual gravity, it's like don't think about it.
Not at all.
Like when he was flying with Lois Peter Pan style instead of like Invincible style, where now they got to account for the issues of traveling fast. It's like, look, I touch you, you get fly power. Don't think about it. Look,
exactly.
Making this shit fly with the effects is hard enough as it is. We're not about to have a scientist explain to us why we have to redo this. All right. No one's even seen flying.
Exactly.
People haven't been spoiled by flying on screen enough to start questioning the physics behind it. Give it a few more. Give it a few more decades.
But generally, the flying looked good, right?
It did.
Give it a few more decades. Then we'll say, "Oh, they're flying." Well, I'm not sold. I don't believe it.
Well, we've talked a lot about the visual effects. Yeah, I just want to give them props too. Like, I think the flying was the best. They clearly put a lot of thought and effort into like, how do we make this flying look as realistic as we can? I was thinking like this Superman flies a lot slower than a lot of other versions of Superman we've seen. And one of the reasons I think they ended up doing that, I don't know what happened to my screen. I got a little bubble or something. One of the reasons I think they do that is then it would match.
A thought, Wesley. Wesley has a thought.
It matches the speed of the helicopter that they were using to fly or to make those shots work. And so you can't have Superman just like zooming everywhere the way he does today. You know, he has to fly kind of at a regular speed. And it's not like it didn't work. I thought it was like great. You see like the wind flapping, it just made it look realistic. I thought they did a really good job with like all of those visual effects. You know, sometimes things would look, not sometimes, a lot of times things would look pretty wonky too, and like that's okay. I mean, you know, it was
wonky
1978.
Compared to what?
But what?
Wonky compared to what?
Wonky?
I guess the big comparison is Star Wars for their day, right? Like Star Wars is the high watermark of VFX back then.
And
so like, does it look as good as the original Star Wars?
I think for the most part, yeah. I think there was like that fast forward running scene was like a little bit off, and
but like I'm saying, Brian, you get what I'm saying, right? Then what is on then?
What is on what?
Like if the running in that scene looks
off, if the running is off,
what does it look on in comparison to what? Like if you're critiquing how it looks, my question is then what it
to reality.
Okay, so just to how super speed looks in real life.
Yeah. To like how close we were to super speed in real life.
I think that's the disadvantage that Superman had, right? Like Star Wars takes place in outer space, you know, in a galaxy far, far away, right? So there's no precedent for how we need things to look.
That's true.
Somebody running super fast in Kansas, you know, that's pretty hard to pull off.
Yeah.
Also,
for sure.
Superman digging through magma to stop an earthquake
and holding up the Earth, and then gluing it back together. That was great. I wasn't mad at that. I was actually I thought that was pretty good. And then the special effects, you know, where like the Earth opens up next to Lois, or like the gas station explosions, all that stuff looked really good. They used a lot of miniatures, I think, which like you could kind of tell it was miniatures sometimes, but it was still okay, not bad. Anyways, that's all. I think we talked a lot about visual effects. Let's keep going. That's obviously going to be one of the things that like stick out to us 25 or 50 years later, however many years it's been. But you know, I think they got away with a lot of things and did a lot of cool stuff, and they were ambitious about it, and they, you know, for sure to be applauded for that. I wanted to talk about a couple of the characters. Lois Lane, played by Margot Kidder, you know, I think probably, you know, made quite famous by this movie. But what did you think about like her version of Lois Lane, or the director's, I don't know, who the writer's version of Lois Lane here? There's a lot of screaming going on. A lot of misspelling. Apparently that was like a running gag, that she's like a great reporter but can't spell. I don't know. What did you think, Brian, how they characterized Lois in this one?
Yeah, why does she spell rapist with 2 P's? Like,
because then it's rapist.
Like, what? Like,
yeah.
Come on. Lois Lane is not misspelling these words. She doesn't know how to spell massacre. But
do you think that was something that was true to her character before that point? Like, did they?
You mean in the comic books or something?
Yeah, did they take that from the comics or something?
I'm not sure. I don't think I've ever read a single
one of the older Superman
comic book. Yeah, I don't
know. Maybe I read half of one. I don't think I've ever gotten through
just half of one. You never read Doomsday, where he got broken?
Yeah, like I said, half of one.
Okay.
So I think as a Lois Lane character, you know, I was pleasantly surprised by, you know, how good she was and vibrant she was kind of like throughout. However, I have quibbles about, you know, how she was responding to catastrophic or dangerous, life-threatening events later throughout the movie as like the plot churned, which, you know, where she seems sort of like I guess she seems maybe a little out of character in some of those moments where she's just like totally damsel in distress going, when throughout the, you know, the other parts of the movie she seems like she's kind of a badass herself, as you'd want Lois to be, right? Like when they get held up by the mugger in the alley, she deliberately throws her purse at the ground, right, rather than being compliant to the mugger. So she, you know, she's a defiant person, you know, has a lot of will to get the stories that she wants. And then when she's interacting with Superman, like, it is on. She is asking some questions, or she's like, "How big are you? You know, like, what color is my underwear?"
Dang, she was forward. Like, whoa.
It's like, you know,
she wants the bigness right now.
Yeah, she was talking her game. She really wanted to holler at him.
She's
she
like
was
peak 70s feminism. Like, yeah, go for it. Why not?
Shoot your shot. Shooter's gonna shoot.
So,
Shooter's gonna shoot.
So like, yeah, I think compared to other Lois Lanes throughout like TV and movie history, she to me, she like is right up there with them. Do I think she's better or like the best? Not necessarily, but it was definitely like a fun dynamic to see her and Clark.
Yeah, seeing her was like really jarring to me because of how helpless she often was, and she was just like screaming and screaming and screaming, a lot of screaming and like like helpless. And then sort of the like, oh, I'm goo goo eyes for Superman was like super different than how I'm used to seeing Lois portrayed in visual media, like especially since I like grew up on like Superman animated adventures and Justice League. Like Lois is very much like no nonsense, like she's her own boss in all the animated series from the 2000s or so. And so seeing this version of her, I was like, oh, this is like a very different version of Lois. And I don't know that I liked it. Like, and obviously it's silly to expect that 1977 Lois would be that whatever. I don't know what the right word is. Powerful, in control, independent, but she's definitely not the 2000s version of Lois that I'm used to sort of seeing.
Yeah, she's not going to impact major plot points in the way that more modern day Loises do, right? Like the more modern take on Lois
is the plot point.
She can resolve plots without Superman in a way, right? In this, she was just more the object of those things,
right?
Which is definitely probably a product of its time.
She's all right. She's
okay,
like
fair.
I was sold on their like romance and all of that, but like I'm just used to other. I think I'm just maybe unfairly comparing her to other later versions of Lois. That
it's not unfair. That's the whole point of this show.
Does it hold up?
Later versions of Lois have more agency and more to do, and
makes it more interesting.
Right? They don't have, but now the echoes of what she is now and how that shows up, you can definitely see. But this was definitely her in the early stages of them really making her an interesting character, and more than just Superman's love interest, which they even do a better job in this one because she is like a woman with like a successful career and all this other like dope stuff. So it's not like she's just a bum or anything, but later versions of Lois are just more refined and more fleshed out. But this is a good start of a character who becomes much, I think I'm a bigger fan of down the line. Like Superman, the animated series, Lois is like one of the better versions. Even the Superman and Lois cartoon, that version's good. But I think all that, this version had to walk so they could run.
I want to point out, too, that there was never a combat scene for Superman in this one. He doesn't fight. He doesn't fight anybody.
Oh, yeah. There's nothing to fight, really. Right?
Going to fight.
He does things. Yeah, he has to hold up the world or fix the Earth.
He's got to grab a missile.
Yeah, but he never has to fight anybody. The closest we come is that mugging where he catches the bullet, but he doesn't fight that guy.
But I guess they knew that making those movies concurrently, they probably knew, hey, this first movie there's just not going to be space story-wise, so it'll be a superpowered fight against a peer. But hey, once we establish the world and all this stuff, because man, Brian, I'm with you. When I first turned it on, I was just like, is that Zod? Like, I didn't know. I was like, a bunch of Kryptonians being sentenced. One of them's bald and imposing. Is that Zod? I think he's talking about the kneeling. I'm like, that's Zod. So clearly they knew from the beginning.
Cue the laser eye.
Yeah, it's like the opposite of a post-credit scene. Like you'd almost expect this movie to have a post-credit scene to show them floating in the Phantom Zone and just know Zod will return. But there is no fight. But again, I think that was them kind of knowing they probably were just gonna save that for the next movie. They they were swinging for the fences.
Other like anachronisms of like this show or of this movie were when the the Gene Hackman's or Lex Luthor's sidekick lady was pretending to be like after the car accident, they like the army like gives her CPR, and they just like fully take advantage of her. They're like, I better give her mouth to mouth, and it's like, whoa.
The gag
and then
is like,
yeah, and then they turn around, they like he makes them all face like the other way, and then like even later, like she steals a kiss from Superman and like admits like he wouldn't have kissed her otherwise, so she had to do it now, which like would not be in any of today's movies with Superman in them. So those were two kind of things that definitely stood out as, oh, that wouldn't have worked in today's time.
A little rapey with two P's.
For sure.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about Lex Luthor, because Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor he's like a mastermind, but like over the top, like
kind of wacky, right?
Yeah, upset with his henchmen, living in a Grand Central Station themed underground apartment, giant apartment with a giant swimming pool. It's just a very odd like take on Lex Luthor compared to what we've seen since. He's he thinks of himself as like a criminal mastermind, but not, and has clearly pulled off some like very inventive things here. But it's a little silly. It's a little bit like Adam West Batman villain in some ways. That I don't know if it worked. I'm not gonna lie. I don't think this Lex Luthor is iconic in the way that other Lex Luthors have been. But Lex Luthor is hard to do. He doesn't have superpowers, so he's just a billionaire. But like that doesn't really compete with Superman, and so he does what he does. He has to put Superman in positions where Superman's power isn't the answer. Like there isn't a way to be in two places at once. So they do that okay. I don't know. Sav, what did you think about Luthor in this one?
I don't like this version of Luthor.
Okay.
It's not bad, but I'm used to a much less campy ha 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 twist. Like he was so over the top twist my mustache level of bad. My goal is to sink the West Coast, and I already have prefabs of the new estate that I'm gonna put there. And my bumbling henchman even names a little area after him. It's just like
Otisburg.
What? Now there were some moments I liked. Like I did enjoy. I didn't like his goofiness. I did like his intelligence. I thought the evil was a little too cartoony for me to take seriously. I'm like, this plan is like so evil, I can't take you seriously. But like the idea of
also he could have real estate. Yeah, he was like, I want more.
Yeah, but it's like I don't mind the real estate, but just sinking the West Coast. Okay, I feel like there's a less ridiculous way to go about that, but still have it be your evil plan. But but there are moments I really liked. So when he used the high pitched frequency that freaked out the dogs to call out Superman, cool, and then give a false lie to lure Superman to him, and then when Superman says, "Hey, what is that? What gets you hyped up planning? The thought of killing people?" Is like, no, actual plans, and he reveals his evil plan. I'm like, moments like that were dope because I like when Lex is cold and really, really intelligent and smart. Him revealing the kryptonite, him doing, what was it, a point where he shot a missile, but it was meant to ultimately help divert him from, like the fact that Luthor tricked him enough to where he couldn't stop all the missiles was sick. I'm like, because Luthor just finessed him of like, all right, you strong, but like I'm rich and really smart, and like you can't beat that. Like I appreciate him from a writing perspective. I just think, but from an acting perspective, I like the direction. I'm a bigger fan of the Superman the animated series. Is it Clancy Brown? I like the Clancy Brown version of Lex Luthor more.
Yeah,
inevitable Lex Luthor.
That's probably the
smart cold politician. Luthor. The Lex Luthor who people don't think publicly is a villain because he's so intelligent is the version of Luthor I like the most. Not the I'm rich evil mustache twirl. Like I like I like Bezos Luthor, not Musk Luthor.
I think they're the same.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you think about like,
Bezos has the bald head.
10 years later, we get Jack Nicholson's Joker, who is also way over the top, right? And kind of, campy and that such. And we're coming out of Adam West Batman villains who are also like way over the top, like that Riddler and Penguin and stuff. So I mean, maybe just people hadn't really tried that version of a villain before. They didn't expect it out of a comic book villain. Like, it had to be over the top in order to be interesting. So, I don't know.
It also doesn't play to Gene Hackman's strengths. Like
Yeah.
he's not to me he is not a character comedic actor, right? Like
Yeah, he can be like
to me,
miserable comedic actor.
Yeah, which
Yeah,
is a
when he's
little bit
miserable.
different. Which is
Yeah.
different, right? It's again, it's not the mustache twirly kind of guy that makes like a delicious, funny villain. He's somebody who's a little more gravelly, right?
Yeah.
And so it's weird
Grouchy.
to see him in this role. Like why cast Gene Hackman of all people to do that? Where he like knowing the rest of Gene Hackman's career, you could see him as the other type of Lex Luthor, the one who doesn't outwardly say I'm a criminal, which is like so ludicrous to hear Lex Luthor say, because that's not
I'm a criminal
how,
mastermind.
yeah, that's not how I perceive him. Like
Yeah.
he's somebody who doesn't even think of himself that way. In the best iterations of Lex Luthor, right? He's the guy who's after power and influence, and trying to oppose Superman, but doesn't see himself as like this villain. He sees himself as just like a like a Bezos type guy. Like I'm just rich and powerful, and I'm gonna wield that.
All right, let's wrap it up. So I wanted to try and get a sense of like where you guys stood after having seen now this movie, and I assume you guys have seen Man of Steel, directed by Zack Snyder, starring Henry Cavill. A very, very different movie, I think it's safe to say, but still centers on Superman. What are we thinking? Like, do you appreciate both of them equally? Are you like, nah, like I really love, like I would much prefer to watch this version or versus that version? Kind of where do you sit in terms of a more modern, quote unquote, modern movie like Man of Steel versus a much older movie like, Superman the movie by Richard Donner? Brian?
I've only seen Man of Steel once.
Okay.
And I remember it being like, I remember it exceeding my expectations. For one, I really do not like Zack Snyder movies, like just flat out. And so like I was pleasantly surprised by Man of Steel that it wasn't as cold as some of his other movies. But I think
you mean bad, not as bad as his other movies.
I mean, yeah, same, right? It's like, so like I mean, that movie is also right for like, does it hold up? I think the original 1978 Christopher Reeve Superman is more fun. Right? It's like less serious than the Zack Snyder version, which is like almost too serious to a fault. And it's a lot more fun.
Did you see that where he tries to go to the phone booth to change?
Oh yeah,
but they like did a gag where it's like
it's not
just the stand phones. Yeah, it's not a booth, so he can't go in there. That was pretty funny to me. I was like, that must have been a nice joke of the time.
If they did a 2024 Superman, like
if he just Superman looking for a phone booth but never finding one.
Where are the phones? Maybe he jumps inside the glass screen of an iPhone. I don't know. But yeah, so the 1978 version is I don't know, it just has more fun, and it feels like more appropriate to the character of Superman. Like it's just like he's a hero. He has this like quiet moral compass and mission that he's trying to carry
he's a Boy Scout,
and he has that presence. And of course, then you got the Clark Kent Lois Lane thing, which I think works great in this particular movie. So I don't know that 1978 Superman actually holds up, but I think I do prefer it a little bit more than Man of Steel.
Okay, all right. Sav, where you said
both entertaining, but yeah, I think this movie really makes you realize how dark and somber Man of Steel is, and I was entertained by Man of Steel, but I don't know if that movie makes a good Superman story. This movie was a good Superman story. it might be campy and cheesy and focus a lot on his childhood stuff, but you watch this movie and come out of it having a good understanding of why Superman is the way he is and why he behaves and believes what he does. Now, whether you approve or like it and all that is a whole another thing, but like, this movie understood Superman's character very well, and I like this version of his character. Humble, powerful, cheesy, a Boy Scout to the point where it's almost ha-ha funny, but you respect it when you really realize how powerful he is and how he really is chill because he just had good parents and good people around him. Like, so it's cheesy.
Yeah, that
like
12-year gap in the Fortress of Solitude.
Like there's even a lot
makes me understand.
Yeah, there's even I can't tell if that's sarcasm.
No, I'm serious. Like it makes me understand why he is like Boy Scout to
like his dad, his second dad, like, really instilled in him, hey, nah, man, we don't get down like this. And when he even chose to save people with the power the way he wasn't supposed to, it was like that was a character conflict moment he had. But yeah, I'm sold on like, I like that Lois made fun of him for saying, hey, nobody says swell. And he was like, well, it just feels natural. And I'm like, this is the cheesiest shit I ever seen, but homeboy, this is really like how he get down. Like, we've met people like that. I'm like, are you doing a bit right now? And it's like, oh, nah, this is really how you are. Respect, because it's authentic. But also, he could be a god, so I'm really grateful. We could get Injustice Superman real easy.
I'm going the other way. I'm going the other way. I think I was watching this movie and just like oftentimes being like, the pacing is just like too off for me, given like how I'm so used to seeing movies now. And I think there were just some logical things, like you guys are saying, like, oh, we got a sense of like who he was as a kid, but like really we got like 2 scenes of him in Smallville, like, or 3. It was him chasing the train, him at the football practice, and then him watching his dad die. You know, like, I guess, but like we didn't really get a sense of like, he didn't have to like do anything, I guess. Like, it was just like, oh, I feel bad for myself or whatever. I don't know. I felt like they just sort of like skipped some steps, and it was fine because it's like, you know who Superman is, you know what things were going on. It wasn't like people didn't know who Superman was. But I think in today's movies, you would want more like logical pieces in place before you get to the point where it's like Lex Luthor revealing his evil plan all over the place. So I don't know. I think I would prefer to see a more modern take on this type of movie. I don't know if Man of Steel is the answer, but I think I would much rather watch a movie like Man of Steel, where you're getting modern sensibilities, you're getting like modern pacing, where things are happening a little bit more quickly. Even if, Zack Snyder's not my favorite for sure. So I'm going the other way. I'm going with Man of Steel.
I mean, honestly, I don't think I'm queuing either of them up unless you assign it for a conflict.
Man of Steel is a more fun movie to watch, but
guess what we're watching next?
Man of Steel is a more entertaining movie to watch, but again, I think it would be silly for anybody to pretend that was a great Superman story. But maybe for me, it was undermined by the dad letting himself die in the storm. I was like, this is the dumbest shit I've seen. He could have just died incidentally. They could have did it like in the movie where the dad just have a heart attack or something. And it's like, hey, your dad still died, but like, it wasn't you letting him die. It was that life happens and you're not a god. And I'm like, that lesson worked. I don't know.
That didn't bother me as much. I mean, it was stupid, but it didn't bother me.
If I had a god level son, even if I didn't want him to reveal his powers, if I'm about to die, I'm gonna say, okay, you don't gotta go public, but save me.
No, that is opposite of what you always argue. You always argue that the good of humanity rules, or the good of the more
dad was
rule
wrong.
over your individual
was wrong.
needs.
First of all, it was dumb of him to say hide your powers.
No, you're being inconsistent here.
And Wes, I could.
You're being inconsistent. You always say that you're going to sacrifice yourself for the good of humanity.
The dad sacrificing himself wasn't for nobody good.
But it kept his son safe.
How the hell did it keep him safe?
Because he knew that if he was to like become public, then he would be, attacked or studied or whatever.
Superman.
That's what he feared.
And
Superman was trying to follow the wishes of his dad.
I can see the gears turning now. You realizing, this ain't a good argument. Anyways, come on,
absolutely.
Do your host duties.
You're just being
do your host duties and keep it moving before I have destroyed this podcast.
You are being inconsistent.
Brian, I want you to know I'm sparing your friend right now.
I'm
actively sparing him.
Argue the way you normally argue on that one. Come on. All right, friends. That'll do it for us. Hit us up on @confidently_pod on Instagram. We try to post there daily, either a story or a post of some sort. So interact with us there. We're excited to see how this episode went. Hopefully we'll do more. If you got ideas on what we should watch next, the idea is just any kind of retro movie that kind of is up our alley or something we can compare to today. Friends, we're out of here. Swell.
Sing the theme song.
Dun 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 dun. I have perfect pitch, guys. Did you know that?